Am I the asshole for making my brother leave after he brought his kids to my child-free wedding? My wife and I got married days ago. We decided the wedding will be child-free. We thought this was the best option considering several factors from budget to keeping the order, etc. Everyone got an invitation, but my biggest concern was how my brother Ramsey, 36, was going to react. Ramsey married young and has 4 kids that he takes everywhere he and his wife goes. They're always there at every family event. The kids are grade A hyperactive to say the least. I gave Ramsey the invitation in person and he read it out loud in a sarcastic tone and then said, "Child-free, huh?" I nodded and he got somewhat mad saying, "Are you serious? But my children have never been excluded from any big or small event, let alone their own uncle's wedding." I said sorry, but it's already been decided and everyone had to follow the rules, not just him. He started off for a minute and then to my surprise he said, "I totally get it, man. No children means no children. No worries." I was glad he didn't start an argument over it and seemed to accept the rule. The day of the wedding came and Ramsey and his wife didn't show up until shortly before the ceremony began. My best man noticed that Ramsey had arrived and had all his kids with him. I was legit mad and I went to meet him at the entrance and saw he brought all his kids against me and my wife's wishes. I greeted the kids and asked my sister-in-law to take them back to the car. He loudly asked what the F was wrong with me. I asked why he brought his kids and who said it was okay. He said no one, but he was planning on bringing the kids all along and figured that by initially agreeing to my rule, then showing up with the kids anyway would get me to agree on letting them stay. I stated this was no event for kids for many reasons and that everyone respected the rule except him. He complained about me disrespecting him and his kids since, again, he never attends any event without them. In his words, "Wherever I go, my kids follow, period." I told him he needed to leave then. Not only did he call me a lunatic, but a terrible brother and terrible uncle. He also called me a simp for agreeing to his wife's stupid rule, saying that if it was him and his wife even hinted he couldn't have his family's kids at their wedding, he would have dropped her right there and then. It was humiliating and loud enough for the guests to notice. My in-laws did too. I told him to leave and that's when my mom and aunt tried to convince me to let it go and let them stay, but I refused and had him leave after a massive argument between us. To say that I felt absolutely shitty is an understatement. Everyone gave me grief ever since that incident and are siding with Ramsey, saying I wronged him and acted cold towards him and his kids when they showed up to celebrate me and my wife. My dad is especially pissed at me for potentially permanently effing up my relationship with Ramsey, his wife and kids by kicking them out of my wedding. He quoted Ramsey won't ever forget this day. So, am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for marrying my sister's baby daddy? I, 36-year-old female, and my sister, 29 female, got pregnant when she was 18 years old. I am infertile and knew I couldn't have kids, so when my sister said she was giving her baby up for adoption, I decided to be her mom. My sister went no contact 5 months after giving birth. For a bit of background, my sister got pregnant by a one-night stand and she apparently didn't remember or know the father at the time of birth, but when my daughter V was born, a man T, 35, messaged me on social media claiming to be the father of my child. My sister had run into him at a club and drunkenly confessed to the pregnancy. We met up, he bonded with his daughter, and well, that man is now my husband of 7 years. Coming back to my sister, she called me yesterday. Although I was surprised at her call, I picked up. We made some small talk and then she said she had just gotten married a year back and both of them wanted children but couldn't because her husband was infertile but really wanted kids. I asked her if she wanted to adopt and she said no, she just wanted her baby back. I was speechless for a few moments before replying that if she wants to meet my child as an aunt, she is welcome to, and we can both sit V down and explain the reason for her absence, but she can't just ask me to give up my child. My sister said she'll sue me as she is the birth mother. I told her she was out of her mind, and then I told her how I married the baby daddy, T. She exploded, calling me names and saying I stole her life. My husband came home from work, and when I explained to him, he was beyond furious. I then got a call from my parents saying I was an asshole for telling my sister she's not allowed to see her baby. I never said that, and I welcomed her to bond with V, but they refused to listen and said I was being insensitive and harsh and flaunting my family. I now feel bad because my sister and I were very close growing up, and I feel quite close to her situation since I know the struggles of infertility. My husband said there was no way he was letting my sister have full time alone with V, and I agree, but I want to know if I'm the asshole for being too harsh and telling her about T. My niece Jenny went through trauma as a kid and ended up becoming an emotional eater, obese, held back a grade, and socially stunned. Her parents, with a lot of pushing, put her into therapy and she was able to heal from the trauma and gain control of her eating. Because they waited so long to take the problem seriously, after she lost the weight, her skin didn't bounce back and she was left with a saggy belly. She had a double roll belly where there's a roll above and below the navel and the bottom one tends to stick out in clothing. Nothing she did would fix it. Her parents are very much anti-plastic surgery and given that she was a teenager, I totally get it, but she was miserable in her body. Jenny stays with me during the summers because I live near a beach and I love spending time with her. Over the years, she would cry and cry to me about how much she hated her stomach and how she just wishes she could look normal and her parents would not let her get a tummy tuck. Last year, I decided that I would give her the tummy tuck for her 18th birthday as long as she cleared it with her counselor. The counselor agreed that this was something that would truly help. She had done it late in the summer, healed while staying with me, and then went to college. I can't begin to tell you the kind of different person she became. confident, happy. She finally wore clothes that didn't hide her body in the whole 9 yards. She came home from spring break and finally wore something that made her mom take notice, and I'm guessing mom saw the scar. She hit the roof and started yelling at Jenny for what she did, asking her if she really spent her college money for something this frivolous. Jenny came crying to me about it, and I knew I couldn't let her mom blame her, so I fessed up. I am now completely blacklisted. My sister basically thinks I'm Satan, warping her kid's self-esteem and self-image. I should have told her to learn to love her body instead of giving into diet culture. Jenny is healthier and happier than she's ever been before. Furthermore, she was 18, and this is something she has wanted since she was about 15. It didn't lead her to wanting more surgeries. It led her to sobbing happy tears after she tried on a curve-fitting dress for the first time. I don't see what I did was wrong at all. At the same time, I know she's not my kid, and we went behind my sister's back. Plastic surgery is a big deal, so I don't know.
Story time about how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend is and has always been very charming. He has a ton of friends and everyone loves him. He's a very good-looking guy and girls are always chasing him. I met him 2 years ago at a party. I had heard a bunch of stuff about him. I heard that he was a player and that he cheated on all of his girlfriends. So when he came up to me at the party, I was really cold. I basically told him I didn't want to talk to him and that I would never give him my number. And unfortunately, this made him try even harder. He could never take no for an answer. He spent an hour trying to convince me to go to have breakfast with him the next day. He was so charming and so good looking. Of course, I eventually said yes. Even a few of his guy friends at the party told me not to go. But of course, I ended up going with him to breakfast the next day. We hung out a few times and then he told me that he liked that I wasn't easy. He told me that I was different from other girls and he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes because I was starting to catch feelings. One night we went out with his friends and he started calling me stupid in front of them. Part two of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So we went out with his friends one night and he started calling me stupid in front of them. He had never done this before and I was really surprised. I thought maybe he was just doing it to impress his guy friends. That's when I asked him straight up in front of his friends why he kept calling me stupid. One of his friends steps up and says, yeah, why do you keep calling her stupid? He stayed quiet for a second and didn't know what to say. Then he just laughed it off and said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that. That's when his friends started asking me questions about myself. I told him I was studying to be an engineer and that I had graduated with top honors. Well, let's just say they were all super impressed. We finally got into his car and he was driving me home. I was upset at him, so I decided not to give him a kiss goodnight. I started getting out of the car and he grabbed my wrist really hard. He pulled me back into the car and forcefully kissed me. He said that I embarrassed him in front of his friends, but that he'd give me a pass for it. I was actually in shock. A few weeks later, we were at the mall and he pulled my hair because he said I was looking at some guy. I tried to get up and leave and he wouldn't let me. Part three of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So at the mall, he pulled my hair back because he thought I was looking at a guy. Then I tried to get up from the table, but he wouldn't let me. That's when he said he was going to have to control me more from now on, because clearly I was trying to look for other guys. Then he dropped me off at my dorm room and insisted on coming up. I told him I didn't want him to and that we should reconsider the relationship. I told him he needed to cool off and reconsider how he treated me. That's when he started to cry instantly. He started apologizing and told me that I was right. Then he told me that he loved me. We hadn't used that word before. I didn't realize at the time that he was totally manipulating me. And unfortunately, I decided to give him another chance. A few days later, he asked me why I didn't tell him I loved him back. I told him I just wasn't sure. Then he started yelling at me, telling me that there were so many girls ready for him to be single, and that he had a girl text him every single night, but he would say no just because of me. So I told him I loved him. After that, he was a lot nicer, until one night he slapped me. Part four of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent it me on Instagram. One night he took me out to dinner and started asking me all these weird questions. He wanted to know about my last ex and why we broke up, and when I didn't give him enough information, he got really angry. When we got in his car, he slapped me and told me that I was a liar. After that, he just got worse. He would randomly just push me up against the wall if I annoyed him. He would constantly take my cell phone and start checking it. He even made me give him the password to my email. I decided that I was going to start recording all the abuse. I started recording all of our conversations and even set up a camera in my room. And of course, I had all this proof. One day I finally told him I didn't want to be with him anymore and he threatened me. I also told him that I was going to go to the police. Then he told me I would never be able to leave him and that no one would believe me because he never left bruises. That's when he started stalking me. He would also show up in my apartment and try to force his way in. He would grab me and try to kiss me and I would just push him away. So I finally went to the police and I also went to the head of the school. I finally got a restraining order and the school expelled him. If you've experienced any of this, please get out of your relationship. Don't make my mistake.
Story time about how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I didn't have a really good relationship with my parents or with my brother. The only person that I did get along with was my sister. You see, we're kind of a religious family. When I was 15, I knew that I liked girls, but there was no way that I would tell my parents that I did. They would never accept that their daughter liked other girls. I basically suppressed all of those feelings for about 5 years. When I turned 20, I decided to come out to my sister. My sister was super open, accepting, and she was really loving about it. She never once made me feel bad. I asked her what she thought about me telling the rest of the family, and she said definitely not. She knew that our parents would freak. I finally got my first first girlfriend a year after that. I actually met her on my 21st birthday. At this point, I still live with my parents, so I basically said that she was a best friend of mine. My parents, of course, believed me because they had no other reason not to. She would come over to my house and we would just spend time together there. She eventually got really upset that I would never tell my parents about us, and she decided to break up with me because of it. Of course, I was brokenhearted about it, but 3 weeks later, I met my brother's now girlfriend. Right off the bat, we got along really well. Like I said before, I never had a really good relationship with my brother. He suspected that I liked girls, but he never came out and told me. But because of this, there was always tension between us. Also, I never understood why his girlfriend liked him because he has no personality and zero sense of humor, which is honestly why I think her and I got along so well. Anytime she came over to our house, I would just find her so funny. My brother had to go out of town for work, so she invited me to go out with her friends for lunch. Of course, I quickly accepted. I honestly didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely developing a crush on her. She was my kind of girl. I mean, I guess my brother and I have the same type. She was funny and incredibly smart. After that lunch, she asked me if I wanted to hang out another 2 times when my brother was away. Everything was going pretty well, but after the 3rd time that we hung out, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew this was going to be a really big problem for me. I'm the kind of person that's always honest with people as much as I can. When my brother finally came back, she started coming over to the house more. I was both excited but worried at the same time because I knew that I had feelings for her. One day she came over, but there was nobody home. That's when I decided to be honest with her and tell her the truth. I opened up to her and told her my history and that I had a crush on her. She smiled and told me that it was okay. That's when she grabbed my hand and we started kissing. Trust me, I know that it's totally wrong because she's my brother's girlfriend, but I was falling in love with her. That's when my brother comes in and sees us making out. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when my brother comes in and catches me making out with his girlfriend. He instantly went berserk and started punching a hole through a wall. His girlfriend tried to calm him down, but he told her that if she touched him, he would probably end up hitting her. Luckily, no one else in the house was home, but my brother threatened to tell my parents. Like I said in part 1, my parents are very religious, and I knew that they would never accept me as I am. That's when my brother said that he had already been suspecting of me and his girlfriend because her and I had been hanging out so much. He then started calling me a bunch of names like freak and other really inappropriate things. Then the fight became about him and his girlfriend. His girlfriend started telling him that she had been miserable the whole time that she was with him and that he had been manipulating her the whole time. She told him he was even toxic, which I can believe because my brother's kind of like that. She then left the house and told him that she never wanted to see him again. My brother started asking me a bunch of questions like how long I had been seeing her. I told him that this was the first time her and I had ever kissed. Then he told me that I needed a man to teach me how to be a woman. So instead of staying and arguing with him, I decided to leave. I decided to go ahead and tell my parents the truth before my brother did. I was absolutely petrified. I told my parents that I like girls, and I told them what had happened with my brother's girlfriend. That's when my dad told me that they weren't upset that I like girls and that they would have accepted me either way. But they were really upset that I had hurt my brother's feelings and that I caused them to break up. They were surprisingly okay with what I had told them. I mean, after years of being petrified of them knowing the truth, I felt so free. But I also told them that my brother had been toxic towards her and that's why she didn't want to be with him anymore. My parents actually ended up being more angry with my brother than with me. But you'll never guess, a few months later my brother told my parents that he's bi. I haven't contacted my brother's ex, but I really feel like I should. I mean, I was falling in love with her. What do you guys think I should do? P.S. My brother's much happier.
Am I the asshole for telling my dad that he's a effing man-child for refusing to deal with my sister's first period? My parents are divorced and my mom lives about 2 hours away from my dad, his fiance, and my sister. This weekend I visited home and stayed with my dad and sister. I get home at around 7 in the morning and see my dad off to work and my sister off to school. At around noon, I wake up to a phone call from my mom telling me that I need to go pick my sister up from school. I ask what's going on and she tells me that my sister started her period and left her go bag at her place. I say okay, get in my car, lay down some stuff, and start heading to her school. On the way, I get a call from my dad and I'm told not to worry about it and go home. I'm then told that my dad's fiance will take care of it. Am I the asshole for telling my dad he's a effing man-child? He tells me I'm a man and don't need to handle it and I should let a woman handle a woman's problem. I'm dumbfounded, but hey, if his fiance is on her way over, I get to sleep again. I ask how long it'll be and he says these exact words. She gets off at 3 and the school will give her new pants for the time being, which is crazy. I tell him that's ridiculous and I'm going to pick her up. He tells me no and I said I'm going to get my sister and hang up before he argues. I take her to the store and buy her some pads and tampons and I also get her food. I get home and I tell her to wake me if she needs anything. I wake up to banging on the door and it's my dad. He said I defied him by taking care of my sister and that it's disgusting that I bought her stuff for her sexual health. He said he's acting like a effing man-child. He goes off and kicks me out. My mom said I shouldn't have said it.
Story time about how I did the you-know-what with my celebrity crushes. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm from a really small town in the Midwest. Growing up, I knew I wanted to go to LA and be famous.
As soon as I turned 20, I decided to move to LA. Showed up to LA with $400 and a dream. My dream was to meet all of my celebrity crushes. I happened to be tall and pretty good looking, so I got myself a modeling agency. A few weeks after I got to LA, I booked my first job. I got to model for a runway show. From there, I met a stylist who introduced me to a bunch of people. And from that, I was able to start going to a bunch of industry parties. I met tons of celebrities, influencers, and basically socialites. I even met Kim Kardashian at a party 4 years ago. When I would go to these parties, I would tell people that I was a model. But in order to prove that, I had to have a pretty big following on Instagram. So I took all of my savings that I had and I bought myself 100,000 followers on Instagram. With those 100,000 followers, I was able to get verified. And after that, I started DMing as many celebrities as I could, especially my celebrity crushes. And no, I won't say who they are. After a few weeks, I still didn't have the responses that I wanted, aka from my celebrity crushes, but I started getting some responses from other celebrities. Not as famous or good looking, but still people that could definitely help me get to them. Basically, my life consisted of going to castings, go-sees, and going to photo shoots. I also started doing music videos, and this is when it really got interesting. I started meeting tons of rappers and started getting invited to bigger and bigger parties, like really exclusive parties. The kind where you couldn't take your phone in, and the kind where you had to sign an NDA to make sure that you couldn't say anything about what you saw at the party. My Instagram was also growing really quickly. I went from 100,000 followers to 150,000 within a few months. I even became really good friends with some celebrities that worked on TV shows, like the kind of TV shows that you guys see on Netflix. I felt like I was getting closer and closer to my dream, but still, I never met my celebrity crushes at any of those parties. One morning, I wake up to a few DMs on my Instagram, and it was one of my celebrity crushes. I basically sent him a message just saying, "Hey, I'm in town, I'd love to take you out for a drink." And he replied with a yes. Nothing else, just a yes. I quickly replied and asked him if he wanted to go for a drink that night. He agreed to meeting up at a bar on Sunset Boulevard. I want you guys to understand something though. I was looking for a boyfriend, not just a one night, you know. So I wore my cutest outfit, nothing sexy. I basically looked like a Chanel model from the 1950s. As soon as he saw me, he told me that I was beautiful and we got to talking. Everything was going really, really great. After that, you know what happened. But here's the thing. I messaged him on Instagram the next day and he didn't reply. He didn't even ask me for my phone number. I got really sad, but the next day I opened up my DMs to another celebrity crush. Part 2 is up.
2 of how I did it with my celebrity crushes. So after I had my date with my biggest celebrity crush ever, he never called me back. But the very next day, I wake up to a DM from another celebrity crush. Now, I didn't think this one would respond because he was in a relationship at the time. No, I'm not going to say who it is. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was super nice over DM and asked me if I wanted to go have lunch. I said yes, of course. We decided to have lunch on the weekend. Throughout the week, he would message me and ask me how I was, but 2 days before the meeting, he totally ghosted me. I didn't hear back from him at all. So the day before the date, I texted him. He finally replied and told me that he had been working. We decided to have dinner and he started asking me tons of questions, like if I had a boyfriend, and I told him I was totally single. When I asked him if he had a girlfriend, he stayed quiet. He said he didn't want to answer that question. Of course I knew he had a girlfriend because it was all over the tabloids. Like there were tons of paparazzi pictures of them together. But here's the thing. We had a fancy dinner. Then he asked me if I want to go back to his place. Of course I said yes. And when I get there, I see pictures of him with his girlfriend, the one he didn't want to talk about before. I then go to the bathroom, open the cabinets, and it's full of girl stuff. I quickly realized that he took me to his girlfriend's place to you know what? I mean, maybe they had an open relationship, but at the same time, like, why would he take me to his girlfriend's place? But I kept my goal in mind. We finally, you know what? And then afterward, he asked me if I wanted to sleep over. That's when I told him no because I knew that we were in his girlfriend's place. He starts laughing and tells me that she's out of town and that she'll never find out that he took me there. I asked him how many girls he's taken there before, and once again, he said he didn't want to answer the question. He then hit me up every single day for like a month. I didn't know if I should see him again because of the whole girlfriend thing, but then I got another DM. Part 3 is up.
Part 3 about how I did it with my celebrity crushes. Clear, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. So finally, my third celebrity crush DMs me back. No, I'm not going to say who it was, but he's pretty famous. He actually invited me over to his place for dinner. He ordered some takeout and we watched a movie. We finally got down to it, to you know what, and it was really bad. And the worst part is, afterward, he asked me if it was good. Of course, I lied and said, yes, it was great. The look of relief on his face was apparent. How could he be so insecure being so famous and so attractive? I didn't get it. I actually did go out with him 2 more times, but I kind of got bored of him. Remember the second celebrity I told you about in part 2? He started getting really crazy. He would call me and text me all the time, and when I wouldn't answer, he would send me messages asking where I was. He became super jealous and controlling. I decided to block him, but I'm now considering if I should maybe unblock him, because the other celebrities I DM'd haven't DM'd me back. But I have a whole new list of celebrities I'm going to be DMing. Should I text number 2 back? What do you guys think?
the asshole for refusing to let my family meet my daughter? I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to have the wedding on the date that my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant and asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially my mom and dad. They said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. They dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying I was to blame. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my family meet my daughter? They said I was to blame and should even move the wedding out of town. I then checked with fellow family members. My brother said he didn't want to look like a joke, my aunt pretended to be sick, my cousin said he had a business trip, and my uncle cussed me out, tore the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and even broke down during the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and have been busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to me to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He said I shouldn't have returned the gifts and that everyone wants to be in my daughter's life. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason the entire family abandoned the wedding?
My niece Jenny went through trauma as a kid and ended up becoming an emotional eater, obese, held back a grade, and socially stunned. Her parents, with a lot of pushing, put her into therapy and she was able to heal from the trauma and gain control of her eating. Because they waited so long to take the problem seriously, after she lost the weight, her skin didn't bounce back and she was left with a saggy belly. She had a double roll belly where there's a roll above and below the navel and the bottom one tends to stick out in clothing. Nothing she did would fix it. Her parents are very much anti-plastic surgery, and given that she was a teenager, I totally get it, but she was miserable in her body. Jenny stays with me during the summers because I live near a beach and I love spending time with her. Over the years, she would cry and cry to me about how much she hated her stomach and how she just wishes she could look normal and her parents would not let her get a tummy tuck. Last year, I decided that I would give her the tummy tuck for her 18th birthday as long as she cleared it with her counselor. The counselor agreed that this was something that would truly help. She had done it late in the summer, healed while staying with me, and then went to college. I can't begin to tell you the kind of different person she became. Confident, happy, she finally wore clothes that didn't hide her body and the whole 9 yards. She came home from spring break and finally wore something that made her mom take notice, and I'm guessing mom saw the scar. She hit the roof and started yelling at Jenny for what she did, asking her if she really spent her college money for something this frivolous. Jenny came crying to me about it and I knew I couldn't let her mom blame her, so I fessed up. I am now completely blacklisted. My sister basically thinks I'm Satan, warping her kids' self-esteem and self-image. I should have told her to learn to love her body instead of giving into diet culture. Jenny is healthier and happier than she's ever been before. Furthermore, she was 18 and this is something she has wanted since she was about 15. It didn't lead her to wanting more surgeries. It led her to sobbing happy tears after she tried on a curve-fitting dress for the first time. I don't see what I did was wrong at all. At the same time, I know she's not my kid and we went behind my sister's back. Plastic surgery is a big deal, so I don't know.